All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And before I start to go through the tip calculator program that was done by Muroc in the Muroc book, I'm rating my own. So I'm going to come back in here, and I think it's time to start looking at the code. So my main activity, what I want to do is first start thinking about what variables I want. Well, I will want one for here. I will need one for each of the buttons. I will need one for here and one for here. So, just because I don't remember very well, let's see. I'm going to literally write these down because I want to use, you don't have to use the same names in code that you end up using here. But to me, it makes sense to do that. So I'm going to use edit text, bill amount, button 10%, button 15%, button 20%. So again, the first variable, edit text bill amount, will be for right here where we actually put in what our bill is. All right, button 10% will be for here, button 15%, button 20%. This is edit text tip. And the next one is edit text total. All right, so I have to create those 6 different variables. Now I'm going to have to change and add to my import statements. So I can import Android.widget.edit text because I'm going to need that. And I'm going to also need to import, oops, put your fingers on the right keys, import Android.widget.text view. Okay, all right. So the first one is going to be of type edit text, and it will be called edit text bill amount. All right, I might as well put all my edit texts together. So edit text, and the second one will be edit text tip. The next one, another edit text. And this will be edit text total. All right. And I'm going to just call this bill amount. Let's make this a little smaller here. Text box. This one will be called tip amount text box, and this last one will be total amount text box. I'm a little anal about lining stuff up, so there we go. All right, and then we've got our 3 buttons. So button, oops, button 10%, and that will be for our 10% button. And let's make our life a little easier. Oh, I didn't add that. So I have to import the button also. So import Android.widget.button. Probably don't need the text view, but I'm going to keep it there just in case I do need it. So there's my first button. So I want button 10%, button 15%, and button, I guess I'll keep that 20%. All right, so those are my setting up my variables. we'll say here declare class variables, not del care. All right, then in on create, one of the first things I want to do is create references to class variables declared above. All right, so I'm going to come here and say let's do the first one. And that's equal to, remember I have to cast this, edit text, and it's find view by ID, and that's r.id dot, and that first one is edit text bill amount. So there's my first one. Again, I've got to map up all 6 of these, and that should be edit text bill amount. Edit text bill amount. So should that. Okay. There's the first one. All right, I've got 3 of them now just because I want all 3 of these, but I will fix this. So this is edit text tip. And this last one is edit text total. All right, so those are done. Let's do the other 3. Button. Button 10%. And that's equal to, we have to cast it again, but this will be of type button. Find view by ID, r.id dot button 10%. All right. So there's 10, there's 15, there's 20, make that smaller so you can see everything. Move that. There we go. So there's all my references. Okay. Now, when I click any of these buttons, so if I put an amount in here, if I put 50 and I click 10%, I want this to say $5 and I want that to say 55, which would be my bill amount plus my tip amount. That should make sense to everyone. All right. If I put 100 in here and I click 20%, that should be 100, that should be $20, and that should be $120. Okay, hopefully you get the idea. Okay, so that's what I'm interested in doing right here. Now, I'm doing the same thing each time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my own routine. All right, I'm going to come in and write my own routine, and I've got to write it outside of the onCreate. So I'm going to write in here private void we'll call it calculate totals. Don't think I'm going to need anything passed in, but we'll see as we get going. All right. So I can come in here, and there's 2 ways that I can do this. All right, I want to show you first the way that I've been doing it previously. And I don't know if this is the best way or not, but I can click a button here and I can go and I can find up here someplace is on click. Again, I wish that these things were a little bit better as far as how they're laid out. So right there. All right, so I could go right there, which says when I click this, all right, I'm telling you what to call. So I could type in there, calculate, what do we call that again? Calculate totals. I could do that, calculate totals, and I could do that, calculate totals. That's the way that I was taught to do it, but I've been looking at some videos and stuff online, and the way they recommend it is to come in here and right here and to put in, put in for my buttons, button 10% dot on and set up an on-click listener. All right, so if I type in here, new, view, okay. Now I did that kind of fast, so I typed in the name, which was button 10%, and I literally then chose after the dot, the on-click listener, typed in new, the letter V for view, hit the tab key, and it filled in the rest of this for me. Which is what this is saying now is, what do I want to do? I'm overriding the on-click method. So again, I want to call this right here. And when I do this for 10%, I'm going to pass in here 0.1. And we'll call this double percentage. Okay. The good news now is I want to do this 3 times. So I'm going to do it, instead of copying it like I could do, I'm going to show it to you 3 times. So button. Oh my gosh. Why this keeps changing size on me all the time. I've tried to fix this, but I can't get it to work right. So button 15% dot, just like we did up here, set on click listener. So dot set on click listener, just like we did before. The word new, type in a V, hit the tab key so it fills in the rest of it for us. If that's hard for you to see, put it on 2 lines. Okay, so I want to call calculate total here. But I want to pass in 0.15 because that's 15%. So I should put a 0 there, I guess, for completeness. All right. And then finally, one more, button 20% dot set on click listener. All right. New V tab. Again, I'll put this on another line. And again, we're going to call our calculate totals. And we're going to pass 0.2 because that's 20%. So now, in onCreate, before onCreate, I'm declaring my class variables. One for each of the things that either are going to show calculated output or provide input. Okay? So not for my titles, etc. Then I created my reference to each one of those variables. All right. And finally, I came in and set up click listeners. So each one of these we'll call calculate totals. Well, what do I want to have happen in this calculate total? All right. Think about it. Play computer. What I want is I want to take the amount that was put here and multiply it by whatever one of these, 10%, 15%, etc., and then take that total and put it here. Then I want to add that total and that total to get this total. Now, hopefully that all made sense. If it didn't, bear with me for a couple minutes. All right, so I'm going to put in here double. Double. And we'll call this tip. and we'll set that equal to 0.0. All right, another double. Total, we'll set that equal to 0.0. All right. Now we'll say tip equals double dot get set. I want to convert this. Double dot value of and that was our edit text bill amount dot get text dot toString. So, oops. So in other words, I want to take that amount, all right, and I want to multiply it by what? Percentage. Okay. And total, total is going to be equal to the bill amount. In fact, let's do this. Let's make another variable here. We're going to say double bill amount, and we're going to set that equal to this. Double dot value of, etc., all that good stuff right here. Okay, now I can say tip equals bill amount times percentage, and total is going to be equal to the bill amount plus the tip. All right, and what's left? Well, what's left is to I'm going to put all this in and try to run it, see if it works. Then we'll come back and take a look at everything that we've done here. This is wrong, I can tell by looking at it right now, so we'll have to fix that. This is an edit text tip. This is the tip. And this is the total. That looks better. All right. I have no idea if what I've typed in is going to work or not, but we're going to give it a try. So let's do a file, save all. I'm seeing some stuff here where it looks like I've got warnings. I don't like that, but we'll go back and look at that in a bit. So we've done the file, save all. Let's try to run this. We'll again use our Nexus 1. I want to use values when I start to test this that are very simple. So I'm going to use $100 right here. So 100, 10%, $120. That's not right. All right, 15% and 20%. So that's not right. Okay, but the good news is it's looking very close to where what I want it to look like. That's good news. All right, the bill amount looks okay. I don't have a clear right now. I could put that in. This still isn't centered, and I still don't know why that's the case. All right, but looking at it for a first go at it, that doesn't look too bad. So this was 2, 15, and 1. Percentage. Okay, bill amount times percentage, which should have been passed in, total. That all looks like it should be correct. 10%, 15%. Ah, that should be 20%. That would goof things up, so that's the first error that we found. And the other thing I want to do two things here. All right. And the first is I want to show 2 decimal places in Android. Round to 2 decimal places. That should work. This string.format is what I want to use here. All right, so it says the number will be formatted automatically. That's good. So let's come back to the program. So instead of this tip.toString, I'm going to, this will become tip. And we'll do that again, and this one will become total. All right, it's getting there. Okay, so that hopefully will fix that. Let's do another file, save all. Let's go back to my activity main. I want to come here. I thought I changed the size of the text here, but it isn't showing as being changed. Text size, we'll make that 24 as well. We'll come in here, text size, we'll make that 24 as well. All right, I like that better. And text alignment, we're going to try to center this. I don't know if that's going to work or not. Text alignment, again, we're going to try to center this. All right, let's do a file, save all, and let's run the program again. We'll again put in 100. That's not right. It's not 20%. These aren't changing. So something is goofed up. It's looking pretty good though. The tip, the total. So that is adding correctly, but it's not figuring out the tip correctly. All right. So once we do that, I'd still like to get that centered where it's not. All right. We're pretty much finished with this particular iteration of it. So let's go back and take a look again. I want to go back into my code. The answer is always in the code someplace. %, 15%, 20%, 10, 15, 20. bill amount is correct. Tip is the bill amount times the percentage, which should be set correctly every time, but it's not. And this still isn't being centered. Those are the only two things that I'd like to fix on here. Text alignment center. I think that'll fix that. Let's check. Let's cancel. Let's do a file save all first. Let's run this. See if that's finished. Then there's only one thing to fix and we're done with this particular program. That's centered now. Good. 100. Nothing. Nothing. That's the only one that works, and it's giving us 20. Wowzer. Well, we'll have to work on that. So that one works. This one and this one are not operable. Button 10%, button 10%, button 15%. I'm going to pause this for a minute. I'm already at 27 minutes, but I'd like to finish it on this tape, so I'm going to pause and see if I can figure out what the problem is. So I'll be right back. All right. Sometimes I'm not looking for the right word here, but sometimes I surprise, confuse, whatever, befuddle myself. The error was, it was a copying error. I copied this one to these two. And I changed this from button 10% to button 15% and from button 10% to button 20%. But I left all three of these at button 10%. That's why I was getting the wrong amount. Okay, so that's why that was wrong. All right, so looking at it from the top, we added in here, we're not using this text view, so we don't need it. Do you notice how that's a lighter gray? It's letting us know that that's not being used right now. Unused import statement. All right, so that fixed that. Then we came in and we declared our class variables. This was what we put in for our bill amount. This was what we figured out for our tip amount by multiplying the bill amount by 10, 15, or 20%. This was the addition of this and this. This was the 10% button, the 15% button, and the 20% button. Hopefully all that made sense. In here, we added the references. So here are the references to these 6 buttons are here. And then we added on-click listeners, which said when we click the 10% button, call calculate totals and pass 10%. When you click the 15% button, call calculate totals and pass in 15%. And when you click the 20% button, call calculate totals and pass in 20%. Then in the calculate totals, we came up with this right here, declare and initialize local variables. And these are local because they're being defined inside of a method, where these are global because they're being defined outside of any method. All right, so the bill amount, literally what we're saying, what that is, that bill amount, is that's whatever we put in right here. That's bill amount. The tip is, so again, assume we put 100 in here and we press the 10%. It's 100 times 10%, which means 10 should go into there. And the total, which goes in here, is the addition of what's in that bill amount plus that tip. Now, hopefully, because I went through that quickly, but hopefully that made sense to you. And then we put them in there, but we do the string.format because we want them to be 2 decimal places. And I've added the $sign here myself. Might be a way to force that in there. I don't know what it is. So let's save it one more time. Let's do a save all. And let's come in and let's run it again. And we'll put in $50 for our amount. So we're going to come in here and put in 50. We can put in 50.00. That's fine. 10%, this should be $5 tip. And it is. And 50 plus 5 is $55. 15%, that should be $7.50 and $57.50. And it is. 20%, that should be $10 and $60. And it is. So as of right now, everything that's in here is working. Is it the best looking program that's ever been made? Well, of course not. And what I'd like to do in the next iteration of this is I'd like to write one more of my own. And what I'm going to do, we're kind of hamstrung here because we only can use these 3 amounts. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I'm going to use a slider control, which will allow us to leave a tip from 0% to 100%. All right, I'm going to try to at least attempt to do that. So I'm going to get rid of the buttons, replace those with a slider control. All right, I'm going to try something else before I finish here. In fact, I'll do it after I leave. But what I'm going to try to do is to create a brand new project. After I create a brand new project, I'm going to come back to this project, copy my entire activity main, my text. I'm going to copy all of that. All right. And I'm going to copy all of my strings, and I'm going to copy all of my Java. Then I'm going to come back and change this from in here to remove the buttons and add a slider. So I'll be back to do that very shortly.